And as Shamlaji and Pearl, they discussed in the beginning, in the introduction, this is the primary thrust for the GeoParsi scheme. And we assure you that this scheme will follow all the medical protocols strictly, and of course, confidentiality will be maintained. Now, again, this discussion is important because there is a huge burden of infertile couples on India, on Indian healthcare. If we look at a number, it was a data published in 2018 in Economic Times that 27.5 million or more couples are suffering from infertility. If you look at a percent or a prevalence, 1 in 6 couple is facing difficulty in conceiving. But there is a good news that at least 80% or even more number of cases will require only simple methods for their treatment, which is right guidance at the correct time, simple medication, serial sonography, counseling, awareness creation. These simple measures are going to help 80 to 90% of the couples. So there's a very small percentage of couple which will require active treatment in the form of some or the other assisted reproduction. Assisted reproduction means IVF and other procedure. We'll come to that a little later. Now we consider ourselves very smart. We plan for everything. For every simple events or other important aspects of our life, for academics, we do a lot of planning. Career, of course, we are very careful. Meetings, work, business, shopping, birthday parties, old friends, wedding parties, everything is well planned. But when we come to fertility, this is the attitude that is common, because people think that something as natural and universal as achieving a pregnancy or a childbirth is not required to be planned. But then, ultimate goal of life is 360-degree happiness, not just one aspect of career or something. So I will again quote Ratan Tata ji that you shouldn't only have academic goals. You should be successful in all aspects of life, including your health, including your mental peace. Everything is in good order. There's no point in getting a promotion on the day of your breakup. Very beautiful lines by Mr. Tata. Now, looking at the natural fertility potential, I'm sorry about the figures and all, but please try to understand the gist that I'm trying to, the message that I'm going to convey here is, it is the woman's age, which is of prime importance in natural conception. If you look at natural conception potential, in those segments where the woman is in the lower age group, chances of natural conception in the first year, 92%, and 98% in 2 years taken together. But if the female partner, if the lady is in the higher age bracket, the chances of natural conception are on the lesser side. Also, one more point to notice is, in the first year of trial, most of the couples who had to conceive naturally have already conceived. The second year, which means one more year of trial, has added very small number to both these figures. So what we understand from here is age is a very important variable, especially the woman's age. And most of the couples who have to conceive naturally will conceive in 1 year of trying naturally, and most of the rest will conceive in the second year of trying naturally. So this brings us to a very important question. When is the time that we should seek medical help? So as we saw in the last table, that if a couple has been trying regularly unprotected and they have not been able to conceive after 12 months, or if the lady is in the higher age bracket, say for example, somebody chooses to get married at the age of 37, wants to start family at the age of say 38, 39, 40, then there's no reason for them to wait for 12 months and then approach healthcare, but start as soon as possible. Or if there is a known factor, which is known to be a negative factor for fertility potential, for example, some hormonal disorder, a history of polycystic ovary, a history of some surgery in the pelvis, or endometriosis, or some sort of male factor, if the male had mumps in the childhood, or some surgery on the groin area, or some trauma, diabetes, any such thing. If you know of any factor that you are suffering from, which can be a detrimental thing to fertility, then you need to approach healthcare faster. Who can help you? Who will you approach? Who will you reach? Well, first person is your partner when you are thinking of fertility, because both of you are equal stakeholders in this. Then for your very simple little issues, you can of course talk to your family and friends. They are a very big and important part of your support system. You can approach a counselor who can help you by maybe dispelling some myth, maybe answering your some queries. Then your family physician is the closest person to you, who can also guide you medically, at least to begin with. Then if the problem is of a different sort, or if it requires specialist gynec intervention, then please contact a gynecologist. Or if the problem is of a complex sort and requires a fertility specialist intervention, then that is the right person to contact. This is probably going to help you while you don't waste time in finding the right person to approach. Now, what are the effects of delayed childbearing on pregnancy outcome and fertility? If you look at this, we just spoke about higher age group women find it difficult to conceive. Reason being that likelihood of getting pregnant goes down and the likelihood of infertility goes up with increasing age. You can see here, reason being the number of eggs, the number and quality of eggs that a woman is able to produce is going to go down with age, and very fast after a certain age. So loss of oocyte is a oocyte, that is egg. It's a continuous process, and the eggs that are aging, which means eggs of a higher age group woman, they could be a cause of some problem, some or the other chromosomal problem with the baby. This is a very simple data. Probably I thought it might attract you, that at fetal life, there are only 6 to 7 million eggs. Fetal life as in when you're in the womb of your mother, eggs number is highest. At birth, the number you can see, it is reduced to 1 to 2 million. At menarche again reduced. Menarche, that is the beginning of periods for a lady when a girl acquires womanhood. And then in adulthood, slowly the number is always going to go down. Then apart from the number and quality of eggs going down, other age-related effects on female fertility are chances of conception, as we have seen, is going to go down. Also, there is a higher chance of miscarriage in higher age group women. Some or the other genetic problems in the baby, for example, Down syndrome. Then other gynecological disorders, they also become more common if age of the lady advances, like some sort of irregular menses, a heavy flow or something like that, some uterine tumors like fibroids. General medical conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, as everybody knows, their incidence is also higher in the higher age group. Now, in the higher age group, having a vaginal delivery is also quite difficult. Many a times they end up in cesarean delivery for some or the other reason, although it is very, very safe these days, but still vaginal deliveries become difficult. Then perinatal outcome, by which we means that the outcome of mother and the baby around delivery also is not as good as those in younger women. If we look at causes of infertility, male and female factor wise, although infertility issues are a couple issue, we don't treat them as a male issue or a female issue, but for academic discussion and from treatment point of view, we divide it this way, that male factor alone is responsible for 20 to 30% cases. Female factor alone is also responsible for similar number. Both of them taken together is for about 25 to 40% cases. And in the rest 10 to 20% cases, exact reason will not be understood by routine general investigations. This is a group which is called, or it's known as unexplained, but it is not really unexplained. There has to be a reason which is sometimes unidentified. This data is only to make everybody aware that fertility is not only a female issue, male factor is also equally responsible. Now, if we look at male factor, before 50, data shows that age itself is not a huge variable, because purely because of age, sperm parameter will not go down very much before 50 years of age. But increasing percentage of male infertility is seen these days. There is a real increase as well as there is more diagnosis. So there is also a sort of false increase in percentage. Now there is a decrease which is observed in both semen quality and also the ability to establish sexual relations, and both of them will lead to male infertility. Even if the semen sample is very good, but the couple is not able to have proper sexual relation, then also ultimately it will be difficult to conceive. Some of the known causes of male factor infertility is smoking, heavy alcohol use, very high body weight. Then other genital issues like varicocele, which means varicocele, then sometimes the testicles, when a baby boy is born, they are not there in the correct place. So some medical issues are sometimes encountered. Those are also contributory to male infertility. Then medical illnesses like diabetes, then some of the environmental toxins, radiations, overall exposure to toxic environment, all that can lead to male factor infertility. Still, there is a large percentage of people where despite extensive investigation, we may not be able to find a reason, but yes, we'll try and find a solution for that. Now, why have I put the word planning in my topic? Because planning for pregnancy is extremely important. If you plan for a pregnancy, there is a high likelihood that you will have a healthier baby, and you will yourself try to become healthier prior to conceiving, and you are more likely to receive early and regular antenatal care. Antenatal care is pregnancy care, during pregnancy care. So if you plan your pregnancy properly, in a planned manner, if you get pregnant, then there is a high chance that you will contact healthcare early during pregnancy, you get good care, you get regular care. And also, supposing for some or the other reason you want to currently avoid a pregnancy, or you want to space pregnancy, that is, you want to keep some gap between two pregnancies, that also you have the flexibility to do. Now, what are the tools for planning? Very simple, you need the access to right information. Now, in this age, information is abundant information is there, but you need to know which is correct one and which one to apply to yourself. You can't apply general information to yourself. Then you have to plan properly and do the decision making, and access to the right healthcare, as we discussed before also. There are a few important things here. There's something called preconceptional counseling, wherein typically a couple reaches healthcare where they have started thinking of a pregnancy, preconceptional, it is the term. So when whatever questions they have, whatever discussions they have, they can be done at that counseling sessions. And preconceptional checkups are done, which are general checkup of health, general health, and also if required, gynec checkups, of course, and the male checkup if necessary. And also some tests are run, general health tests and some of the fertility related tests, depending upon the couple's profile. And if any health issue or health concern is found, that is treated at that stage. So how do we make a reproductive life plan? So it is nothing but thinking about it, that if you want a baby, when do you want to have a baby? What are your goals that you want to meet before having children? You want to complete your education, you want to reach a certain stage in your career. So basically you need to plan it out. Ask yourself these questions. How many children do I want? How far apart do I want them? How can I get healthy before pregnancy? Then also about contraception if you don't want a child currently. Of course, you have to discuss this with your partner. Then you need to ask yourself, both of you need to discuss this, whether you are ready to be a parent. Both of you, do you want to do it under pressure? Do you feel pressured to do that? Well, you will have to understand how your relationship between two of you will change when you have the baby, and how do you tackle these changes? How do you prepare for these changes? How is it going to have an effect on your work or your academics? And how are you going to manage childcare? Will you stay at home or your partner stay at home? So all the practical aspects, basically you plan for it. You have to also be ready to take and make arrangements about taking care of the baby, who sometimes may be sick or sometimes may have special needs. And then sometimes there could be less of money, because a lot of money is being invested in the childcare, and less free time for yourself. So all you need to be prepared yourself for. Then, of course, financially, whether you are ready for a baby, you need to take certain steps, just like financial planning for any other thing. Start saving, shop smart, make a budget for yourself. Also, acquire information about maternity and paternity benefit, life insurance, health insurance, and other relevant issues. And as Ms. Pearl and Ms. Shamla discussed about GeoParsi and the financial benefits, please keep that in mind. Now, how do you prepare yourself physically for pregnancy? Number one is plan well in advance. How we do it, we've just discussed that. Acquire healthy eating habits. Now everybody knows what is healthy and what is not, so I'm not getting into the details of that. But few tips are that plan your meals or snacks ahead. Because if you plan it ahead, you will have a good supply of healthier alternatives, and then you are less likely to make poorer choices. Eat plenty of colors because they give you a lot of nutrients. Be physically active. Try to look at getting 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity each week. Then also, apart from exercise hours, try to be physically active. For example, walking down the street, not taking a rickshaw or using your scooty or your car, taking the stairs rather than the lift. So these are small steps that one can take for being physically active apart from the exercise hours. This generally is very fruitful and very interesting if you can find a friend or a partner during exercise rather than a solitary activity. Take your prenatal vitamins and supplements, especially 400 microgram of folic acid should be taken daily. Prior to conception should be started. And if during your checkups and counseling, if any other nutritional deficiency is diagnosed, that needs to be corrected prior to conception. Protect yourself from sexually transmitted diseases. Adopt safe sexual practices. Choose your partner carefully. Barrier contraception, that is condoms, is again a very good protective method against, not only against conception, but also against sexually transmitted diseases. Take your shots. Take your shots. Protect yourself from contagious diseases. Right now, we are in the middle of COVID pandemic, so all the COVID protection protocol is to be followed. And people suffering from contagious diseases, you have to stay away from them if you are trying to conceive or if you are currently pregnant. Avoid harmful chemicals, metals, other toxins around home and in the workplace, in your general environment. Yes, about your vaccination, rubella vaccine is something that is given to all women of reproductive age group. COVID vaccine is something that everybody is talking about. There's a sincere request to everybody, whoever is eligible for COVID vaccine, please get your COVID shots. We are still in the middle of the pandemic. We don't know what from here on it is going to take. Then other vaccination as per the local protocols. Then tetanus shots are given typically during pregnancy. So all that has to be taken care of. Yes, very, very importantly, you have to manage your stress. So first of all, find out or be aware of those things that cause you stress. If you know them, you'll be able to manage them better. Work actively towards reducing stress. Being Indians, we have very many methods, very good methods to manage stress. One of them is yoga and meditation. There could be hobby activities, there could be music, there could be, massage or whatever you like. Get enough rest. Make it a point to get enough rest. Do exercise, not only to be physically fit, but also to keep your mood fit. Limit alcohol and avoid cigarettes and other things to manage. Do not use them as means to manage stress, please. Find a support person or group if you need them. Stop smoking because it has got detrimental effect not only on the fertility potential of both men and women. Also, there is an increased risk of miscarriage and also a lot of many other complications like smoker women, they will have smaller size babies. There will be chances of delivery taking place earlier. So many problems happen if smoking is a habit. So please get rid of that. Stop taking alcohol and certain other drugs. Very importantly, work on your relationship with your partner, especially if you've been trying to conceive for quite some time and it has not happened. Then sometimes we see a strain in the relationship. Sometimes there's a questioning attitude or blame to each other. So all those things, you really need to work on it. Then if there are general health conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, whatever, tuberculosis, anything, that you need to work on all that. Get your regular checkups. As I talked about preconceptional, prenatal checkups, that is something that you need to be very careful about. Learn about your family's health history, especially for genetically transmitted diseases. Some of the diseases run in family. So if you have such a family history, then you will be more aware, and at least in some cases, preventive steps can be taken. Goes without saying, develop a robust support system. Well, we Indians are very lucky. We have such strong family bonds that we don't really have to look elsewhere. But then we do find very good support system in our families, in our friends, and the counselors, especially at the Geoparsi Foundation counselors, they will also act as a very good support system to you. Also, we at our clinics, we have our own team of counselors, IVF nurses, who will also act as a support system to you during your treatment, during your pregnancy. So, well, of course, develop a good support system. Very importantly, follow your physiology. If you are trying to conceive, especially conceiving naturally, look at your physiology. When is your body most likely to give you a pregnancy? There is the concept of fertile window, which I think most of us are aware, but for those who are uninitiated, there is a time period during the middle of the cycle, menstrual cycle of the lady, during which chances of conception are higher. So it is more fruitful to try and have relations during that period. Reason being that because egg is available only for 12 to 24 hours in an entire menstrual cycle, but sperm can stay in a lady's body for about 72 hours or even slightly more in an active condition. So fertilization or pregnancy will happen only when egg is available. So for a couple who is trying to conceive naturally, it is better to try during the fertile window. Even alternate day trial is enough if otherwise it's being stressful for you. So you need to follow your physiology to let your body work best to your benefit. So get a healthy pregnancy. Once you are pregnant, be sure to keep up all the good works, all the good habits that you have acquired. See your doctor regularly throughout pregnancy and prenatal care. Well, the picture explains itself. It is very, very important to have a work-life balance. Just few things. What does a fertility treatment or assisted reproduction involves? Well, it is not always a very complex thing. Initially, to start with, it could be simple medication to produce egg, then track the growth of the eggs by simple sonography, or even home kits are available. And then you receive guidance about the best days of trial. As I talked about fertile window, then it can be tracked also. Then sometimes we look at a treatment called IUI or intrauterine insemination, wherein we take the husband's or the partner's sperm and prepare it in the laboratory and place it in the lady's womb. That is IUI. Or some other time we take out the egg and sperm from the couple, make them meet in the laboratory, create an embryo and place the embryo in the lady's womb. This is typically IVF. So very little about IUI. Just see, you create the follicles, maybe give medication or natural cycle. You track when the follicle is growing. You rinse the sperm, as in prepare the sperm in the laboratory, place it in the lady's womb, and then after a certain time, you do the test to see whether the lady has conceived. IVF, again, very just a schematic thing. You stimulate the ovaries, by which we mean that we give medication to produce follicles or eggs in the ovary to grow eggs. Then the eggs are retrieved through a small surgical procedure, needle-based surgical procedure. Then we prepare the sperm of the partner or the husband. Then we keep the egg or sperm together or do more complex procedure called ICSI if required. Then embryo will be created in the laboratory. That embryo will be transferred to the lady's womb. And then we check whether a pregnancy has been achieved. By and large, 40 to 50% chance of pregnancy achievement can happen with the help of in vitro fertilization. Now, talking about those procedures or the causes of infertility, or which treatment is suitable for which couple, all those discussions we will have in our subsequent sessions. Today, as I said, I want to keep it a very light and a drawing room type of a discussion. Only one myth I want to break here, that IVF treatment can be balanced with work. Many people ask us that, do I have to leave the job? I can't manage it. How will I do my treatment because I have so much responsibilities? So my advice is that please do everything that you want to do. It can be balanced. How you do it? You understand initially before starting the treatment cycle, what is the timeline of your IVF cycle. Let your colleagues know about your being busy for a certain hour of the day with your IVF cycle apart from your work day. Your procedure days will be scheduled, and there is, if not much, but little flexibility is possible in your procedure day schedule also. And on those days you can delegate your work, and if push comes to shove, then put yourself as the first priority, at least on those few days. So you can manage on and balance your work with your IVF treatment. So a few important points that I want you all to remember is, infertility is a common thing in recent time. Success rate wise, IVF is the most successful treatment for infertility, although it is not the only form of treatment available. Paying attention to fertility and caring for your fertility early on in life is very important. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, financially, in every way for a pregnancy, and work-life balance is the key. Yeah. You've got to dance like there is nobody watching, love like you'll never be heard, sing like there's nobody listening, and live like it's heaven on earth. Thank you very much. I'm opening the session for questions, and I would invite Shamla ji, can we have Dr. Mistry and Dr. Shiraz to make comments and add to it?
Yes, I would like to say a few things, please, if possible. Please go ahead, Dr. Shiraz, please. Yeah, that was a lovely talk, and I would like to thank the Geo-Parsi people for including me in your team. Now, there are a few things that I thought of, and I thought of it as a Parsi because I have been a Parsi and I have seen the community and I know what is there. The Geo-Parsi is a wonderful scheme, but they are all concentrating in treating people at the age of 35 plus most of the time. That is not the answer. The Parsi community's main downfall is its education. If you see, the educated people always have less children, and our community is an educated community. So that is the main thing. When you're talking of goals, as Dr. Rita said, have a goal, finish your education, finish this, finish that. By the time you're 35, okay, I have 3 children. I'm a gynec. I got married at 26, had one child at 27, one at 30, and one at 32. And I'm one of the few Parsis who has 3 children. It has to be part of your life. It does not have to be, ye khatam karke ye karenge. Career settle karke fir bachcha hoega. Kyunki fir settle career ko break lena nahi hota hai. You know, so we have to, it is the education and the mindset of the Parsis that has to be changed from the age of 20. They have to get married, and once they are married, they have to have 4 children. Also, Dr. Rita talked of family support. Believe me, in the Parsi community, joint families are not the norm as they are in my Hindu and Muslim families. And that is why there is no family support. You are alone. You are alone to deal with it. People start thinking of marriage only at 29, 30 years. They are not willing to go without a lot of things in life which are necessary economically. So there has to be a medical preparation, there has to be an economic preparation, there has to be a social preparation. And that is very, very missing. And it's just not done. Secondly, you're talking of planning. Once the planning comes into it, the stress comes into it. And stress is one of the major reasons for infertility. There are so many people who we have had adopting a baby and getting pregnant naturally in the next year because the tension is gone. There are people we know of who have a second wife and the first one gets pregnant in communities which allow it because the tension is gone off from the first one onto the second one. So if you're planning so much, you know, you say infertility, this is your fertile time. We have patients who cannot perform on the 14th day or on the ovulation day because they're so tense that it has to be done. So it's not just medicine. It's a lot of personal, a lot of things, and the Parsi community has to get married properly. Burden of life, burden of infertility in Indian community. You say 1 in 6 people are infertile. But if you're a non-Parsi, believe me, those 5 have 25, the ones who are conceiving. So there is no burden. The population is increasing in the general population. It's only in the Parsis where even if the parents have 2 children, you will find they will have only 1 grandchild. They should have at least 4 grandchildren, if not 6. So this is just, it's just something that I've thought of as related to the Parsi community, because I suppose most of our audience will also be Parsis. So get a little compromising. Think of marriage while you're studying. It's possible to do both. Think of not wanting the most handsome and the richest and the best looking person around. A 50-year-old man will be fertile at 40, but at 40, he's not going to get a 25-year-old wife. So he's still going to marry somebody at 45, 50 who's 37, 38. So you're back to your fertility problem. So you have to marry early. Parents have to be willing to help children out by having them in the house. Children have to be willing to live with a less amount of privacy so that they can be there with the parents also. Only then it works out. Okay, so this was just in general and very non-clinical.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Shiraz.
Yeah, I can surely relate with Dr. Shiraz at some point of time. That our Parsi community being more ambitious. Some people really want to study. They want to finish off their careers. They're thinking of marriages. If we are talking about Parsi community, I think most of them are even aware, which even I was part of, that even just after your 10th standard, there's something which is called as a holiday program for youth. So which involves a lot of activities for the Parsi, mingling of the Parsi, Parsi community, people coming together, doing extracurricular activities. I think, basic knowledge, basic idea about fertility or whatever, the reproductive age should be instilled right from start. Some of these women don't even know, who come to our fertility clinics at 35 or 40. And when we tell them that, you have a certain number of eggs in your body, which tend to decline as the age advances, most of the women don't even know that, they're born with X number of eggs and they are eventually going to decline as the age goes forward. So I think this, by incorporating this in certain education systems, in certain holiday youth programs, and I feel that like Dr. Shiraz said, that there is obviously no right time to have a child, because that will never ever come. Because with us being so ambitious, we being doctors, and we think that, oh, we have just completed MBBS, let's just wait for a postgrad, let's wait for a specialization.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Yes. I believe that I could have kids at 27, 28. My
Absolutely.
career would end up at 50.
Absolutely.
And that is what I'm doing. I'm not a very busy practitioner right now.
No, but
I'm 56 now. So you have to have that compromise.
Absolutely. You have to plan your family as soon as possible, because like Dr. Shiraz said, that probably it will not be difficult for a male at the age of 40, 50 to get pregnant, but for a woman it's going to be difficult. And
but
not so about that.
You won't find a young wife.
Absolutely. And even people coming at an elder age, I do tend to explain to them also that, you have to spend the right, when your children are moving around, they're enjoying themselves, they're playing in the parks, you should be at an age to enjoy with your kids. You should be there for the moment, to be there with them. You should be running around, because a lot of women come at 45, 50, and then by the time their children go to school, they're already in their 50s, and not many of them are having diabetes, blood pressure issues, and they don't end up enjoying their children. So I totally agree with Dr. Shiraz that, you have to put your family and, your marriage at a earlier age, because that's what not many people do these days. And I think it's very, very important and key to instill this thought in the younger population.
Yeah, just want to add, I totally agree with Dr. Farzan and Dr. Shiraz, because that was the entire point. That do not place your marriage or your childbearing on the back burner. Do it at the right age. And as Dr. Farzan very rightly said, there is no right age. And Dr. Shiraz is an example of how she could manage her wonderful career with 3 kids. So hats off, ma'am. I think you should be the source of inspiration.
No, it was a very conscious choice of putting the career on the back foot, and the career would have been much, much better if there had been no kids, but that was my choice. And as I said, I can build up a career from 50 to 70. I can't have children from 50.
Yes, true. You can't bring back your fertility, but you can take up your career anytime that you want to. So that is the message that we want to convey today.
Thank you very much. Yes, it is very important to get married at the right time. and have children at the right time. Ms. Sri, would you like to comment
Yeah, and
now?
again, like Dr. Rita Modi said very rightly that, everything, it all narrows down to the word called planning, I'm not talking about planning your fertile windows and things like that, like Dr. Shiraz said that, it puts you more stress. I'm not talking about that planning, but, even when you're married, preconceptional counseling is something which is very important, because not many people, they just end up we see many women at 2 months, 3 months pregnant, coming directly to the gynac for the first time, and then they have either major, we do a routine test and their TSHs are shooting high, or probably, many I've seen almost in last few months, women who have had previous children with hearing defects coming again positive with rubella IG, IgG, sorry, IgM positive. So with active rubella in the pregnancy. So it's very, very important that we instill this preconceptional counseling in women at an early age. So as soon as you're married, maybe you're not planning for a child, maybe you're not thinking about pregnancy at a woman, but do pay a visit to your gynac. Make sure that everything is in right place. It's no harm to even check your fertility potential at that time. Nowadays we have certain tests which can even, many women just come into a clinic and ask us that, doctor, I mean, I'm planning to plan fertility after 2 years. Is it okay that I wait for 2 years, or should I have to start early? So, basically nowadays we have certain blood tests, we have ultrasounds, we have which we'll be talking about later on, as to how we generally even gauge the fertility potential and what we call it as an ovarian reserve. We have these tests available with us, which we can not confirmatively say, but at least give a rough idea to women that, to tell them that, yeah, right now I think it's the right time. You should start thinking about having a child, or probably if you want to wait, you can wait for a few months. Secondly, again, pointing out certain conditions like thyroid, diabetes, medication, another thyroid, diabetes, blood pressure. Another one important thing, many women are nowadays with with PCOS and rest of the conditions. Many of them are diabetics, concurrent diabetics. We see hypertension at a younger age. Many of them are on pills which are not safe in pregnancy. It's very important you go with your pills to the doctors, tell them that these are the tablets which I've been taking, and most of the antihypertensives or the blood pressure medications which are prescribed on a routine terms are not safe in pregnancy. So it's very, very important that we go with the medication box, show it to the doctor, tell them that, doctor, these are the medications I've been taking. Probably I'm planning in the next few months. Do you think that these medications will be safe enough for me to continue during pregnancy, or to switch over as soon as either I get pregnant or as soon as, I start planning pregnancy? And that goes with all the chronic conditions, be it diabetes, be it blood pressure, be it epilepsy. Again, like focusing on thyroid issues, many of us see the thyroid report of TSH, and we see that, oh, it's in the normal ranges and we are euthyroid. That is, we are in a perfect state of thyroid. Nowadays, according to the even American College of Gynec and even a lot of Indian Endocrinological Society, giving a benchmark of 2.5 as a TSH, so many many women just read the report something as 3.84, and they will say that, okay, my thyroids are normal, and then they come up with pregnancy, and the thyroids are again, TSH is shooting high. So it's very important to get all these parameters into check before you're getting pregnant. So planning is very, very essential, especially when I'm talking about preconceptional planning. Again, like I think we'll be focusing on later on also, yes, fertile window is important when you really want to have pregnancy. But like Dr. Shiraz said, that there are a lot of, we have seen a lot of couples coming up with performance anxieties, a lot of male partners coming up saying that, even when we are doing artificial insemination, or people coming in for giving their samples or procuring samples for the semen samples, they are not able to do so because of the performance anxiety, because they know that this is the ovulation time and the male has to perform. So there is some amount of erectile dysfunction, or some amount of premature ejaculation which we generally encounter in these population, and most of it comes right from here rather than local causes of so mostly it is due to psychological factors causing erectile dysfunction, and that is the time when the men are generally not being able to perform. So what we say that keeping sex every second or third day when you're even planning pregnancy is good enough, and if you have to get pregnant, you'll get pregnant, but if you don't, like we said that, the definition of infertility, what we have been reading into books is completely different from what we do into our clinical practices, because that definition cannot be incorporated, at all age groups and all age parameters, because the definition probably of 2 years may be good for someone who is in 24, 25, for 1 year may be good for someone who is at 28 to 30, but that same duration might not be good for someone who is in their late 30s, like Dr. Rita also pointed out, that, you have to seek help. If, if you're really planning pregnancy, go visit your doctor, tell them that, doctor, I'm really planning to conceive. Is my fertility potential okay? Or, do I have to do certain investigations, or straight away go on for something which will give me a higher success rates? It's not only about getting pregnant at that age, because when you're at the 30, 38, 40 bracket, we don't want to waste a lot of time in you getting pregnant, because again, like we said, that chances of diabetes, blood pressure, increased chances of cesarean sections, increased, earlier births, all these things also come into play. So it's the time taken to pregnancy, that is the time to achieve pregnancy, should be shortened as much as possible. So, some people might just keep on trying, and they've tried for 10 years. They'll come to you and say, the doctor, just give us medicines, with even the ovarian reserve very less, and say, the doctor, just give us medicines, we'll try. But it's very important to tell them that, the time taken to pregnancy has to be decreased, especially in those 38, 40 brackets.
Also, Farzan, I would say that egg freezing is something which a lot of women come to me with. And it's always better to freeze 31, 32-year-old eggs rather than
Absolutely.
at 38, 39.
Absolutely.
So if they are thinking of not having the right partner, they have to freeze early.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I think the key goes with egg freezing is, I have seen in my clinic so many women coming for egg freezing at the age of 30 or 40, which is absolutely makes no sense. Doesn't make any sense, because at that time you are left with no eggs, hardly any eggs in your body. We tend to do multiple IVF cycles. From what we are seeing in even the papers which are published in UK and obviously in the fertility sterility journals, you need at least 12 eggs minimum. If you have 12 eggs, you can
and especially
eventually.
If you're talking of the Parsi community, how many Parsi donor eggs or donor sperms do we have?
Not many.
So then if you're Geo-Parsi, then that is also that is a factor which they have to consider.
Yes, absolutely, not many. So I think egg freezing also, if you're considering an option, please consider at an earlier date, when you realize that your fertility potential is quite good, and that is the right time to take a decision or take a choice of for egg freezing, rather than going in at 35, 38 and realize that, oh, I've still not got married. I've just, I'm in the peak of my career right now. I need another few years down the line, and now I'm thinking of egg freezing, and that generally doesn't work, because you just end up back coming to that same grind, and eventually you end up having either IVF cycle later on, or probably you have to go on for donor eggs later on in the life. So I think that's what Dr. Shiraz has also pointed out, very, very importantly.
I think we'll
freeze your eggs at the right time. And I think we'll be having a dedicated session for it later,
on this,
later
because
on.
this is a very, very important topic.
Yeah.
So we'll certainly have a discussion on this later.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, doctors. It was really very interesting and informative. Questions, if anybody wants to please ask questions to them, general questions, of course, please type on the chat box. Of course, no names will be read out, but we could direct questions to the doctors and they'll answer your queries, please.
I think we have got one question about how one gets pregnant with PCOS. Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Would anyone like to take the question, or shall I?
Dr. Shiraz, if you could take that question, please.
Yeah, PCOS is something which in my practice I have found is highly overrated as a cause of infertility, because I have a lot of PCOS patients who get pregnant on their own. In fact, I've had unmarried girls getting pregnant and coming for termination saying, but I have PCOS, how did I get pregnant? So it's not that they're never ovulating. Most of them do get pregnant on their own. Yes, a few of them require a small tablet which will help them to ovulate and get pregnant. And a few of them will require IVF and other assisted reproductions. So it's not as if PCOS will not give you a pregnancy. No. And PCOS is becoming very, very common. Again, because stress is a major factor, dietary habits, weight gain, and it's a lifestyle thing. It's no longer PCOD, polycystic disease. It's now PCOS, which is syndrome. So we have to just, I mean, I don't think one needs to be overly worried about PCOS. I would even give a PCOS patient a chance to get pregnant on her own before actually going for further things.
How
I don't
much
know if
time,
Dr.
Doctor?
Mehta would agree.
Yeah,
Would
how
Dr.
much
Fazil
time
agree?
should?
So yeah, so whenever we are talking about PCOS, like we said that PC, initially we used to call it as a PCOD, which is a disease, and now it's subsequently called as PCOS, which is a syndrome, which is a huge area of conditions associated with it. So we have lot of varieties also in PCOS. We have the obese ones, we have the women who are very thin and still they have PCOS. Many of them say that we are thin. I mean, I can't believe that I've got PCOS because someone who is just next to me in my school, who is more on a heavier side as having PCOS, and then I got diagnosed with PCOS. So PCOS as in such, yes, like Dr. Shiraz said, is one of the overrated diagnoses. But initially when we talked about PCOS, when I think initially when I did my residency, I think when I did my MS, the PCOS had just one paragraph, and now I think we have whole chapters and whole articles on PCOS. So there are a lot of advances going. Initially just called as Steen-Leventhal syndrome, and now it's come into PCOS, and we have got this entire spectrum of disorders. PCOS, yes, probably sometimes they do get pregnant naturally. It's not that all PCOS are infertile, to put it in the brackets. PCOS may require some help in getting fertility, in getting pregnancy. Sometimes I call PCOS is a jackpot disease. The reason is, at one end of PCOS, the problem is that there is poverty in plenty. So you have plenty of eggs, but still you don't get pregnant. And on the other spectrum, we have, the premature ovarian insufficiency, when, there are no eggs left in your body and then you plan to get pregnant. So PCOS would be a little bit more advantageous for us because we have more eggs. It's just that somehow they are not ovulating. So we have medicines with us, which we call it as ovulation induction, which we induce ovulation. We give the medicines or we give the injections to help women ovulate, and they might also get pregnant with just by giving medicines and just by giving these injections without any treatment. Yeah, but we just can't we can't keep on doing this for a longer period of time. Like I tell my patients that once if you are if you admit your kid in the first standard, you have to take your kid to the second, third, fourth. So you just can't keep on putting him in the same standard. So if you have tried with a certain set of treatment, it's not working for you, it's mandatory for us to jump to another one. So go onto a step ladder and a sequential phenomena. Again, another problem with PCOS is sometimes giving medicines, injections. They tend to just sometimes they don't ovulate, but sometimes they just hyper respond. They give a lot of eggs, and then eventually they have to go in for IVF, not being prepared for it sometimes because of more eggs formed in the body. So PCOS can get pregnant naturally. PCOS, if not getting pregnant, we can just try out with certain medicines like ovulation induction. We have a lot of supplements to be given to PCOS. It is still a query as to how much they help, but we do give certain medications, certain supplements, even certain tablets like which we give in diabetic patients, like metformin, which also helps to regulate their PCOS and then help them achieve ovulation. So the key factor in PCOS is ovulation. The moment she ovulates, she will tend to get pregnant. So the whole key is to get her ovulating.
Thank you, Dr. Mistry.
Would like to just add one more point here. Because
yes,
polycystic ovary syndrome is associated with many other issues, high blood pressure, sometimes some diabetes quite commonly. So medical issues need to be corrected. Sometimes they are so anovulatory, their cycles are so infrequent that sometimes their uterine lining becomes too thick, or they get a lot of bleeding and then anemia because of that. So all those also will have to be corrected. And during pregnancy also, once they have conceived with whatever treatment, then or during pregnancy also they will require special care, because their chances of getting pregnancy-induced diabetes and other complications like bigger baby, diabetes related things, and then delivery related issues, they are also more common. So a lady with PCOS, yes, it is not impossible that they conceive naturally. There is an array of treatment, a range of treatment which can be applied as per the case, and they will require very good antenatal and perinatal care. That is what I want to say.
That's only the very severe ones. Huh? The diabetes, the endometrial cancer, and the hypertension which they are worried about is more at an older age. A person having PCOS at a young age may develop these things at an older age. I don't think it really matters that much during pregnancy. Most of them do get pregnant. Many of them, I wouldn't say most, get pregnant and carry the pregnancy through quite well. Once they are pregnant, the whole anxiety of PCOS goes off and they carry it through well.
Thank you, doctors. The next question that has come up, Dr. Modi, you could take this question. My partner had COVID in March. We both are yet to take our second vaccination dose. Is it okay to plan for a pregnancy right now?
Second vaccination dose is due, which means that I presume that you have taken your first dose recently. Then just because COVID has happened in the past, I presume that the partner that is being mentioned is male. Then sometimes COVID is shown to have an effect on the semen parameters. So that has to be checked first before the couple gets into a pregnancy. But I would suggest that if the second vaccination is due in a very short period, then that should be finished. And then you can start planning your pregnancy. And also your own health status and your partner's health status, including the sperm parameter, is something that has to be really checked, because we are facing these problems these days.
Okay, Dr. Modi, after the second vaccination, also how many weeks they should wait? Could you throw some light on that?
There's not much of a waiting period really, which is recommended. 2 to 3 weeks is typically required for antibodies to develop. After that, since typically planning for pregnancy happens at a certain stage of the menstrual cycle. So depending upon at what stage of the menstrual cycle the lady has taken her vaccine. Supposing she has taken, let's say,
the vaccine, she is not supposed to abort. The vaccine is not proved to have any bad effects. Second dose, the 1 month bad, she can plan. But if she gets pregnant, accidentally she continues the pregnancy without any worries. She's not supposed to abort only because she's taken a vaccine.
Yes, agreed.
And what if she has COVID? I mean, suppose she comes to know she's pregnant and that same week she does come to know that she's also COVID positive.
Absolutely nothing to worry. I mean, we have seen so many pregnant women with, I have been dealing with pregnant women with 2 months, 3 months in pregnancy with COVID positive. Absolutely nothing to worry. I mean, there are only a very, very small fraction which we see on the news and which go bad in pregnancy. But from what I have seen in my clinical practice, I haven't seen much of these women deteriorating over COVID. Firstly, very importantly to state that this virus is not going to affect the baby in any way developmentally. So, just like Dr. Shiraz said, that just because even if she has COVID in the first 3 months, it's not going to cause any developmental defects in the baby, not yet proven. Okay, there are certain studies which say that, there might be a little blood clots in the placenta or something. They tend to have a higher chance of going probably into labor early, which also I have seen in few patients of COVID, which they generally have gone into a labor a bit early. But again, we cannot extrapolate this on a very, very large term. So from what I think, if you have COVID in pregnancy, there is absolutely nothing to worry. The only drawback for us is that we cannot assess them radiologically, that we cannot do their X-rays, we cannot do their CT. So we basically don't know the severity of the disease. But just by doing certain blood tests, we have CRPs, we have D-dimers, we constantly monitor these levels and see what is the extent of COVID and what is the severity of COVID, and just mere symptomatic treatment for them. And I think they come out of it. So there's nothing to worry even if she has COVID during pregnancy. Absolutely nothing.
Yes. Yeah. It has to be treated like a standard case of COVID only.
Thank you, doctor. The last question we are taking is how much should the AMH level be? What's like the AMH level normal category? Any one of you could take the question.
There is a range for AMH value. There is no one standard value. So essentially it is as per the kit that is used by the laboratory. Although usually the values that we get, the kind of kits that are used in Indian laboratories, generally a value of anything between 1 point something to 4 or 5 will be considered within a normal range. Anything higher, usually it is indicative of polycystic ovary, although there is a lot of overlap. And there is, which is not to say that people with lesser AMH, this is not to say that people with lesser AMH will not conceive. They may face some or the other difficulty, but at 28, something that would worry us is something which is very close to, getting nil. or say less than 0.3 or something like that. That is something that is going to be
I've
very
again
sensitive.
found AMH to be very, very unreliable. I've had
Absolutely.
natural conceptions with 0.3
Agreed.
and 0.4 AMH also. And one thing I'd like to leave as a take-home message, doctors will treat you. Ultimately, it is God which gives the baby. So even with your IVF, your take-home pregnancy rate, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't do IVF, is 45 to 47% live pregnancy rate. So it's ultimately God that decides who's going to be in the 45 and who's going to be in the 55. So take your
Absolutely.
treatment, take your doctor's advice. If they will advise you, God will give you the baby.
There is no one there's no one value for AMH, to be very to be precise. It's not that at 28 your AMH should be 2, or at 30 your AMH should be 1.8. We generally see the ranges. Ideally, I mean, the ranges vary, and I think for doctors treating, it might just be different for different doctors also. For me, I take a normal range of around 2 to 3 is what I take. Anything more than 3.5, I consider them to be, because I've seen a lot of 3.5 plus going to the PCOS spectrum, and probably less than that, I would consider them to have just a low ovarian reserve. But I have seen younger women in my practice also at 21, 22 with an AMH of 0.81, and they completely get psyched out with this AMH, because someone has told them to do AMH. They have the AMH of 0.8. They are almost 22, and they say, and someone has told them that, oh, it's high time you should get married now, because at 22, and that comes a real shocker to the women. So don't just go by the AMH, because AMH is not the only test which is going to guide you about your fertility potential. We have other sonography tests, we have antral follicle counts, we have FSH, we have other more reliable tests to know what is the number of eggs in your body. Yes, AMH is a good idea, but AMH, it tells you about your fertility potential, but it is more so also telling you about probably it helps us to guide us what medications and what dose of medications which we give you basically in your IUI or IVF. And nowadays there are also studies to even tell you that how early you will be attaining menopause according to your AMH levels. So if your AMH levels are lower, probably you might be attaining a menopause a little bit earlier than what it is expected if you're young and your AMH is low. So don't go only by this one test is AMH, because people just do this one test. Everyone just writes AMH because that is the test which everyone knows about, and they think that their fertility is completely fired because the AMH is low. So don't go by this one test. There are a lot of ways in which we predict your fertility outcome. So do not get stressed by a low AMH.
I would totally
Thank you
agree
so
with
much,
that.
doctor.
And probably egg freezing. If she had a lower AMH, I would tell her to freeze the eggs earlier, if at all.
Absolutely.
More than otherwise.
Thank you, doctors. It was really very informative. Very kind of you to remove time from your busy schedule and come and address our viewers. And dear viewers, please do visit our website geopathy.org for more details about the program and also for the upcoming events. We'll keep coming with different sessions, and Doctor on Call will also be a regular part of our sessions. More causes, more details you will come to know about it. So keep logging into our sessions. In case any questions have been left unanswered, please write to geoparcy151@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.